Commissioner.
Yes.
Use and abuse of 501c4 entities in the political space. That is ability for overseeing.
That's
so the Citizens United decision of the Supreme Court posited something that I have no disagreement with, which is that if big political spending is not transparent, it is corrupting. That is why transparency was so important to that decision. Political spending that is not transparent is corrupting. That is the law of the land. And we have massive, non-transparent political spending taking place, corrupting political spending. It's over $2 billion, and it could be a lot more depending on reporting glitches. So here are some of the problems that we see emerging. First of all, to play in the political space with 501c3s and 501c4s, the current state of the art is to have a twinned 501c3 and 501c4. The 501c3 isn't supposed to do any politics at all. 501c4 is only supposed to do half. The 501c3s and the 501c4s tend to have the same locations, the same staff, the same boards, the same funders, and yet nobody's looking at piercing the corporate veil and seeing whether the 501c3s are being used to improperly support 501c4 political effort. So I would like to have you take a look at that question. Second, 501c4s are only supposed to do less than half on politics, but what we see is associated 501c4s that are providing a orchestrated cascade where the donor gives, let's say, $1 million to front group 501c4 front group number 1, which spends half of that on politics, and gives the other half to front group number 2, which spends half of that on politics. Now we're up to $750,000, which gives that other $250 to another related front group, another $125. Now you're up to $875,000. One more, and you're over $900,000 out of the $1 million being spent on politics in a coordinated way, conceivably around a single table in a single meeting room. And finally, we have instances of what seems to be massive self-enrichment in this environment as people seem to be paying each other off, again, using these 501c3 and 501c4 mechanism. My challenge to you is that I have seen big blowback from big special interests when the IRS has tried to do its job in this space. I think you saw some of that pretty close to hand. And I think that the IRS has chickened out and refused to do its job in this space because they fear that political blowback. And they've created basically a lawless arena here in which the ref has chickened out and left the field. And I ask you to pull up your socks, do your job, look at these 501c3s and 501c4s, and in particular, look at these new behaviors with the numbers being so massive, with the coordination between 501c3s and 501c4s being so suspect, and with the 50% rule being flouted, to the extent it made any sense to the beginning, being flouted by coordinated groups of 501c4s operating in conjunction. Will you do that?
So, Senator, it's interesting that you use the referee analogy. I shared with the team when I arrived at the IRS that it does feel like the IRS is the referee in that we get booed whether we get the call right or we get the call wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's our role. But we can't leave the field. You know, we can take the boos, but we have to be on the field. So my answer to you is if we are falling short of our responsibilities, then we have to take a close look at that and figure out what we're doing. We have to meet our responsibilities.
You're completely falling short, that you've vacated the field, that there's no effort being put into any of this because of the harassment that the IRS received when it last took a look in these areas.
I think I would ask...
If I'm wrong, please correct me and with a...
Well, I think you're not wrong in that it's an extremely complicated space. We learned 10 years ago that how complicated a space it is. It asks the IRS to answer questions that are extremely, extremely sensitive, and places that onus on the IRS. In an environment where we're trying to build trust with taxpayers and improve the overall dynamic that we have with taxpayers. So I think
My time's up, so we'll follow up as needed
Yeah, we're
on
gonna have
that.
to follow
Let me
up,
also just
Senator.
quickly thank you for your work on our reciprocal FATCA bill, and I think that's important to both stemming offshore tax evasion and dealing with kleptocrat assets, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you.